So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jamara Hollingsworth, and I am the MC for today. I'm just going to very briefly introduce our panelists for our discussion, which is focused on the role of manufacturing in disaster preparedness. So to our far left, we have Mr. Simon Jackson of CariGuard. Simon has built several successful businesses across various sectors, including property development and rental, garment manufacturing, fashion retail, foodstuff manufacturing, and grocery retail and wholesale in Europe and the Caribbean. What Simon finds is that the current challenge is to increase awareness of the need for disaster preparedness and help to develop supply channels for the availability of dependable hurricane preparedness assets in Barbados and the wider Caribbean. So welcome, Simon Johnson. In the middle, we have Ms. Marcia Callender. Marcia is an insurance associate with Capital Insurance Brokers. She is very passionate about helping individuals and families find the right insurance coverage to protect their financial future. With 15 years of experience, having worked as an underwriter and now a broker, she has developed a strong understanding of various insurance products, and she prides herself on delivering personalized advice and exceptional customer service. Welcome, Marcia.
Thank you.
On our panel, we have Mr. Simon Ali. And Simon Ali is a disaster management specialist with over 15 years of experience in emergency management and planning, as well as public education of disaster risk reduction. Simon holds a Bachelor's of Science in Political Science with a Public Sector Management and a Master's with Public Sector Management and a Master's degree in Emergency Management and Planning from the University of Hertfordshire in England. He enjoys community youth empowerment activities as well as theater arts, and he sees it as a means of reaching out to at-risk youth. He is a founding member of of Rum and Co. and the producer of Cocktails and Comedy. Welcome, Simon. So finally, we have with us our moderator, Ms. Tamara Lovell. Ms. Tamara Lovell is a disaster risk management and international development professional with over 20 years of experience working across the Caribbean. She has supported agencies such as the USAID, Bureau for Humanitarian Assistance, the International Federation of the Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies, the Department of Emergency Management, the Caribbean Disaster Emergency Management Agency, in advancing community resilience. Additionally, she works in emergency preparedness and institutional capacity building. As an independent consultant, Tamara has led the technical work on disaster risk reduction, regional program implementation, and multi-stakeholder coordination. She is also an experienced trainer and facilitator committed to practical, people-centered approaches to disaster risk management. Welcome, Ms. Tamara.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's panel discussion on the role of manufacturing in disaster preparedness. Thank you for joining us at the CariGuard National Disaster Preparedness Pavilion. As Ms. Hollingsworth would have mentioned, I am Tamara Lovell, and I'll be moderating today's session as we explore the intersection of emergency management, manufacturing, and insurance, as well as financial management in building resilience for Barbados. Such an important topic. As Ms. Hollingsworth mentioned, we're joined by three distinguished panelists, and so we're going to just get started with opening perspectives. First, I'll invite Mr. Aline from the DEM to share a bit on national disaster preparedness goals and how private sector partnerships can enhance preparedness. Mr. Ali?
Thank you so much, Tamara. I think the first starting point would be to understand that DEM operates within the CDM policy, which is Comprehensive Disaster Management, which speaks to disaster planning for all hazards across all sectors of society, both public sector and private sector. And to achieve this, DEM has to work with strategic partners across all industries. I think that one of the things that we recognize is that, first of all, DEM is not a response agency. We are a coordinating mechanism. So in other words, recently we had the oil spill. So DEM was involved to offer assistance to the BNOC, as well as the Barbados Fire Service and other persons who were being involved in the attempt to clean up the oil that was spilled down Oistins. Similarly, with the hurricane season already starting from June to November, as we know, it is important that DEM is able to form strategic alliances with various private and public sector entities. We are so grateful for working with and assisting CariGuard, because we do recognize that once we have manufacturers of quality products that assist the building resilience, for example, storm shutters, and also to assist with the sale of generators for backup power, these things help to build resilience in the community. And that's one of the things that we focus on, because coming out of the recent UN report, it is important that we empower communities, especially persons who live in housing areas and so on, to take disaster management at the community level, to recognize that although government has a responsibility at the national level, it is very important that at the personal level, that people understand the basic things to do, such as not putting their shavings of grass into drains, or not littering into the drainage network, because those things, of course, would block the drain, and then water after heavy rainfall would lead to flooding. So I do believe that our responsibility, especially in this 21st century, is to make disaster management more sexy or more appealing. And that can only be done by having partnerships with insurance agencies and companies, as well as private sector manufacturers.
Thanks very much, Mr. Aline, for that. I'll go next to Mr. Jackson from CariGuard to speak about the innovations in resilient manufacturing and CariGuard's role in particular in supporting national preparedness efforts and public education. Mr. Jackson?
Thank you very much. The hurricane protection industry has seen significant advancements in resilient manufacturing, particularly in response to the increasing intensity of storms that's been happening in the last few years. Looking at us as a microcosm, CariGuard, we pioneered the change to all aluminium construction in our protection units, shutters, roll shutters, and this is to avoid corrosion. And then for increased protection, there's powder coated paint finish to automotive standard. Because not only is the ability to withstand the intensity of any storm important, but it's also important that your equipment can just withstand the day-to-day stresses of existing in the harsh environment that we face here. So everything that is now being designed is being designed with an eye to maintaining peak performance over the lifetime of the product. In a broader perspective, there's climate resilient manufacturing that companies are investing in machinery designed to withstand extreme weather conditions, again ensuring operation continuity even during hurricanes. There's new research on advanced materials and structural innovations. Just recently, the development of self-healing materials such as concretes, intelligent monitoring systems that improve the durability of hurricane-resistant infrastructure. And then finally, businesses are embedding resilience into their operations by combining disaster preparedness with sustainable practices. Case in point, customers that actually use our hurricane shutters in order to cut down their reliance on air conditioning. In very hot times, they'll run down the shutters. This cuts down their reliance on air conditioning by up to 30%. So it's a sustainable practice, but it's also with an eye to protection as well. These innovations are helping manufacturers and communities better prepare better prepare for and recover from extreme weather.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thanks for that, Mr. Jackson. Quite a lot for us to think about and appreciate when it comes to manufacturing and the innovations in that regard. I'll go next to Ms. Callender to share on the role of insurance rather than the financing sector in disaster preparedness for both, not just manufacturing, but small businesses and for householders.
Yes. Okay, well, we know basically insurance is a product that offers protection and coverage for your risk or your assets. And my role as the insurance professional is to provide advice on the various products within the industry, where I can guide you to say, what is best needed to suit your needs and to ensure that you have adequate coverage and that peace of mind to ensure that your asset is fully covered. That's my role, basically.
Excellent. So let's start, now that we've got those opening perspectives, let's start with delving into this intersection between disaster preparedness, manufacturing, and risk financing and insurance. Let's start with the first question. Why is manufacturing an essential part of disaster preparedness? DM, perhaps you would be able to offer some perspective on this, Mr. Ali?
Yes. One of the things that we notice is that after the recovery of a major event, it is important that societies build back better. That has been the watchword, even when we think about the Sendai framework. And that is just a program where it is encouraged that those countries, when they're recovering from any impact from hazards, that a lot more thought and better materials, better organizing goes into the reconstruction process. When we think back about last year with Beryl and the fishing boats that were impacted, as well as the jetties along the southern coast of Barbados, even to Central, going to Bridgetown, we recognize that we need to build back better as a society. We need to ensure that our coastal infrastructure is stronger, is a lot more resilient, but more importantly, that people recognize, especially the fishermen and boat owners, their personal responsibility for having insurance. And the other thing too is to ensure that those persons who get insured do not underinsure. And I think that's one of the things that this calendar you may touch on, because sometimes people have insurance coverage, but it's not enough to replace the property or the boat, whatever it is, and also the insurance of content. So that's very important. And that's where the partnerships with companies like CariGuard would help homeowners to understand, what? Last year, I lost 40 windows in my house. Maybe I need to invest in some hurricane shutters, or maybe I need to invest in accordion shutters to protect my homes, to protect my business, to protect the apartment that I might be living in. So definitely there is space for the partnership of insurance, disaster management specialists, as well as manufacturers.
Over to you, Mr. Jackson. Why, from your perspective, is manufacturing an essential part of disaster preparedness? I know in your opening perspective, you mentioned the importance of taking the climate into consideration, but what are some of the other factors that you consider when looking at manufacturing and disaster preparedness?
But I think manufacturing plays a critical role in disaster preparedness because it ensures the availability of essential supplies. It strengthens the infrastructure and it enables rapid response. For instance, the production of protective materials from our point of view, like hurricane shutters, hurricane fabric, that are used to protect homes and businesses from extreme weather. Then there's the addition to supply chain resilience. Efficient manufacturing helps maintain stockpiles of emergency goods, such as water filtration systems, medical supplies, generators, ensuring communities have what they need before and after a disaster. And rapid deployment of emergency solutions. After a disaster strikes, manufacturing allows for swift production of temporary shelters, modular housing, debris cleaning equipment, all sorts of things that can aid in recovery efforts. And a final couple of points. There's also, it's worth thinking about the advancement in resilient manufacturing, which ensures that products continuously evolve to withstand the stronger, higher winds that are developing and the changing climate conditions we're experiencing. Manufacturing isn't just about producing goods. It's about keeping communities safe and helping them recover faster.
Yes, well said, for sure.
Yeah, very, very thoughtful comments there. The insurance industry, where does manufacturing and its essential role in disaster preparedness, or how does the insurance industry perceive that importance?
From my perspective, the innovation of the building products, materials, I believe that they offer additional protection and safety to one's property. And additionally, what I would like to advise customers to do would be, ensure that you maintain the property,
Yes.
right? Even if you do upgrades, and keep abreast of the market and see, you can have a look at the same hurricane straps, shutters,
Yeah.
and so forth, because you are more or less enforcing that structure a bit more.
That's right.
And as Mr. Aline indicated, we need to look at rebuilding stronger.
That's right.
Rebuild the infrastructure stronger. So with the innovation of these products and maintaining the property, as you do these upgrades, in some, yes, it will provide the protection and safety, but it can also allow the customer to probably check in to see with the insurance company, hey, I have these things. Can I get a reduced rate, or
That's right.
Yeah.
see what benefit they can derive from having these things.
And when you speak about benefits, you're saying maybe lower premiums, perhaps,
Yes, a lower premium.
greater coverage, and so on. Yeah. Okay.
That's very useful.
It certainly is. It certainly is. Well, having said that and spoken of the essential role of manufacturing in disaster preparedness, what about some of the challenges that you've seen that are ongoing when you think about that intersect? What are some of those challenges that need to be considered or that you've observed over time? Mr. Ali? Sure.
Thank you for coming on to answer. I think one of the main things people always talk about is the enforcement of the National Building Code. Yes, we have policy that speaks to a building code, but what we do find is that a lot of persons, or sometimes even contractors, it may be a situation where contractors or construction companies are not familiar with the building code, or since the building code is not enforced, they may flaunt it, may say, well, I don't think we need to follow this, so we can cut corners here to make savings. But it is important that people follow the building code and that the government, in its wisdom, is able to enforce the building code. Some countries around the world have officers called hazard inspectors. So during the construction phase of a building, a multi-story complex, or if there's a home, there are some inspections that are done to make sure that people are following the building code. So once the building code is followed, it would also have positive implications for insurance. Because if you insure your house can't get insured properly if it doesn't follow the code.
Yeah.
Now, it means that for the manufacturers, now, contractors will say, you know what? For us to make sure that the houses are following the building code, we need to follow and buy products that are approved by government or approved by this standard that allow us to build houses that are more resilient. So I think that in the midst of everything that we are sharing today, political will and government policy is important to enforce legislation for the building code so that manufacturers that provide products that are high-end, but not only high-end, but are resilient and built for this climate, will be able to get those products out. And the benefit would be to the homeowners and also the insurance companies. Imagine next year if there are hardly any claims. Just say that claims for a hurricane last year was Beryl. Let's just say for 2025, if the claims last year were like 70%, there's a reduction to 40%. You can clearly see the benefit financially of following building codes.
Yeah, thanks for that. What about the challenges from the manufacturing side, Mr. Jackson? What do you see as some of the ongoing challenges with that?
Well, I think it's essential that government plans and priorities are effectively communicated to the manufacturing sector, as well as that sector being able to inform government of new developments in materials and technology so that we can ensure that disaster preparedness is up to date with the latest developments. And forums such as the National Disaster Preparedness Pavilion facilitate a great space where these conversations can happen easily. For example, the DEM has a stand right next to CariGuard, and only yesterday, Mr. Aline and I were able to have a conversation on the innovations going on in our industry.
Yeah.
I brought those things to Mr. Aline's attention, and it was a conversation I can't imagine happening anywhere else. Sure, it'd be very difficult to get that to go on. So these kind of informal things and the osmosis effect is very, very useful.
Yes. I agree.
Ms. Callender, what about from the insurance perspective, some of the challenges that you've seen over time?
Some of the gaps that I've picked up for both in small business and homeowners, it's the same. Under insurance.
Under insurance.
Under sometimes persons may not actually know what the value of their home is. And they may just come and guesstimate a figure. Oh, it's probably 225. Truth in fact, it may be 325. So I always encourage persons, I would ask, when was the last time you had a property valuation done? You know, it's best to do that, to get a clear picture of this is my property. It gives you a detailed report of the property, and it also gives you a recommendation of what the insurance value, what you should insure the property at, right? So I tend to try as much as possible, wherever I can, to encourage persons to get that valuation so we can have the correct value and have your property insured correctly. In terms of small businesses, there are various areas that they would have a shortfall. Sometimes persons might just come and just insure the stock, probably some of the equipment, the furniture, fixture, fittings, those kind of things. What I would like to suggest is have a detailed inventory. Just go through everything and make sure you have everything accounted for, so you know, well, you can place a value on stock, furniture, equipment, you know, with a clear mind, and know, well, this is what I have and this is what I'm going to have coverage for.
Right.
Homeowners, similar case. The building, sometimes you would have the building insured, but not the contents. So in the event of a hurricane, there's flooding. Everything, the house is flooded. Your contents are not covered. So what do you do now? See, because it's not a part of the thinking. Try to get them to see, along with the structure, you also have items inside the structure. So you should also have those covered.
Right.
As I mentioned before, you have the sum insured a little less than what it really should.
True.
Right? Some people may just say, oh, I just have a wooden house. I just want the contents. So they're picking and choosing what they want to have insured. I know
Right.
financially it may not always work out in someone's favor, but have a discussion and let us see how we can best help you
Right.
in getting full coverage at a reasonable price that you can manage. Right?
Thanks for that. And then perhaps just separating or identifying the two different groups there. So you have your homeowners on one hand, and you have your householders. So you may have someone who's renting a property
Yes.
and may think that insurance is not necessarily important, but there is the option, from what I'm hearing you say, of insuring your contents. So you can insure a
As the-
property
as the
and you
renter.
can insure your
Correct.
contents.
As the renter, you can insure your contents, while the homeowner can take care of the structure itself, the building.
That's right.
Yeah, good. All right, so moving on to some innovations. I mean, we've naturally spoken about that over the course of the session so far. but just wanting to zero in a little bit more to find out if there are any specific innovations in building materials or emergency supplies that have been enhancing community resilience.
Right.
We spoke about increasing frequency and intensity of systems. We've been impacted over the last 5 years, for example, by a range of hazards, seismic, geological, the volcanic eruption from St. Vincent and the Grenadines that impacted us. We would have had biological hazards with COVID, etc. We would have also had both Hurricanes Elsa and Hurricane Beryl most recently last year impact us. So how are we seeing innovations, both tangible benefits of those innovations thus far, or how do we, and also how do we see that they can continue to build climate resilience?
Yes. Right. That's why the Trade and Innovation Expo is so important. And DEM recognizes the importance of being at this national event to not only participate by sharing literature and information on multiple hazards, but also getting a first-hand view of some of the new technologies and new initiatives. As Mr. Jackson said, you have the CariGuard booth, the DEM booth, but then there's another booth next to us highlighting some products from the BMA, the Environmental Manufacturers Association. One of these things really encouraged me to see that you have these meals that are ready to eat, or we call them MREs.
Yeah.
And what we're seeing is that this is canned food. It goes beyond just the normal tuna by itself or corned beef by itself, but you're actually getting a meal in a can that is ready to eat. So they have 3 options. There was a beef and potato, there was chicken and potato, but there was also chana and potato. And I'm a fan of all 3 because they meet the dietary and protein needs of persons who, during a hurricane or during any kind of hazard event, who can't get food the normal way. If you have these cans of food stockpiled, it would provide you with the opportunity to feed yourself and your family. Not only do they taste good, they're low in sodium and so on. So I was able to test and sample all 3, and I'm really impressed by that innovation. So this hurricane season, I am hoping that these products are able to hit the market and that persons can find these meals that are ready to eat, that are already in a pop-top can. Then they can just easily pop open. You don't have to use a mechanical or a mechanized can opener. You can just pop them open, use a fork, use a spoon, use your hand, and just eat that meal in case of an emergency. So I think that's really good. I also see that in terms of sanitizing products, at the Expo this year, BEEP has a wide range of products, sanitizers, deodorizers that can be used. Since COVID especially, people are taking hand sanitization very important. So it's important that in the midst of a hazard occurring, you may get an outbreak of dengue. Let's just say after a hurricane, all of the water has not receded. You have lots of stagnant pools of water. You can get dengue. You could get some mosquito-borne illness. So having the various repellents like BEEP as well as the hand sanitizers and so on are necessary. And it helps to add to your emergency kit. I mentioned earlier about personal responsibility during hazards or hurricane season. In your emergency kit, along with the lovely meals that are ready to eat by the Environmental Manufacturers Association, make sure that you have your BEEP hand sanitizing products as well as your BEEP insect repellent so that you won't be bitten by mosquitoes and get ill. So it is good to be at this expo to see what is new to the market or what is being relaunched in the market so that people understand their responsibility in personal disaster preparedness.
Thank you. Mr. Jackson?
Well, I think Mr. Ali gave a very full answer, and I'm completely agree with everything he said. Just one thing from our particular perspective as a hurricane protection supplier, the Caribbean obviously is susceptible to extreme weather and hurricanes. And one of the problems with that is that historically the preponderance of wooden structures in the Caribbean has left us very vulnerable. And as we're moving forward and developing wall houses. We need to look at the roof systems to make sure that they're securely fastened onto the building. Because one of the problems you find with a hurricane is you may not lose the wall, but if you lose a window, it depressurizes the house and you can easily lose the roof.
Yep.
So there is one of the newest protection solutions is hurricane fabric, which was originally developed in Florida when they had these huge atriums in hotels with no doorways. And they were finding that mini cyclones were developing within the buildings.
Wow.
So they had to find a way of cheaply but effectively covering these openings. And so hurricane fabric was born. And it's obviously completely windproof, but it's also completely waterproof. The idea being that at the lowest cost per area, you can protect your house from depressurization. It's not designed to save the glass. In effect, in most hurricanes, it probably will save the glass. But the point of it is, if the glass is gone, you can still be using that room, you can still be using the house exactly the same as if the protection was there. And this is a new innovation that is giving people a lifeline to get into hurricane protection without the large expense of the more traditional methods. It's a very effective way. It actually provides hurricane protection up to category 5, which is the highest availability on the market. And it is one of the latest innovations that has been in Barbados for the last 5 or 6 years now. And we're seeing a large amount of interest and uptick, especially after Beryl last year, when a lot of people who maybe had not protected their place because of budgetary restraints suddenly realize that there may be something within their means.
Yes.
Yep.
Well said.
Thanks for sharing that. And perhaps maybe to move on to the next question, because I think that's a good segue into my next question, anticipating that Mr. Jackson, you'll be able to share instances in which that fabric has been used in Barbados, because I am aware that it may be used in some of our emergency shelters, correct?
Yes.
Or not just yet.
That's not my area
Not just
of
yet.
expertise.
Okay.
There's somebody else in the company that deals with the emergency
No
shelters.
problem.
But I do know that in the last several years, we've had many customers, retail, it's mainly retail to be honest, where people are finding, as I said before, maybe they have been constrained by their budget previously, and now there is an option for them to actually protect areas that they might not previously have been able to.
Yeah, okay. Well, can you share some examples of successful public and private sector partnerships that have improved disaster response or readiness from your respective areas? Share some examples with us in terms of how you've seen that happen. Perhaps I can start with you, Mr. Ali.
Yes. As it relates to successful partnerships, I think that we can speak to the Department of Emergency Management as well as the insurance industry, where we are able to promote and try to reach to persons the importance of having insurance. I think another thing that we can consider coming out of the hurricane season, what we have seen too, is that persons are trying their best to not only insure properties, but also using more, I would say, modern and more resilient building materials to assist in the construction of homes. I think that when we look at what is happening at regional level with SEDEMA is trying to encourage a safer building initiative across the region that Barbados will be a part of. So it is important to see where at the local level, at the national level, there can be greater partnerships. I think that by DEM being here and being a part of the CariGuard Pavilion, Hurricane Preparedness Pavilion, is an example of greater collaboration with the private sector and the Department of Emergency Management. So we endorse that. And we are hoping that we can also bring some updated disaster management strategies next year for the TIE 2026. That's what we're looking forward to.
Thank you, Mr. Aline. Any other inputs from you, Ms. Calendar or Mr. Jackson?
Well, as you mentioned earlier, CariGuard is very much involved in protecting polyclinics across the island. And we've just this year embarked on another program to upgrade all the shutters in various polyclinics across the island. And something else that we're very proud to be involved in is supplying the hurricane protection for the new geriatric hospital at Waterford. And we've been involved in that for a year or so now. And the project is coming to its culmination later this year. So that's something that we've been very proud to be involved in as one of the government projects.
Excellent. Ms. Calendar?
No other input from me, but I do agree with Mr. Aline. I do believe education awareness.
Yeah.
That's very important. And it's good to know of the upcoming building materials.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we know, because that is one of the questions that we would ask, what is it constructed of? So it's good to know of what new innovations there are. So I myself like to read up on it as well.
Yeah.
Because sometimes a customer might say, come and give a construction, then I'm like, I'm not familiar with this. Go Google it and see and pull up the info and also
Exactly.
educate myself
Right.
if I'm not aware of that particular new material that's being used in the construction. So
But even in terms of response,
Sure.
more recently with the oil spill, the Barbados National Oil Company Limited, BNOP, they were able to introduce, they have something, they call it mini sausages, which basically would be these constructed kind of tubes that look like large sausages
yeah.
that's able to catch and to reduce the spread of oil. So that was used successfully at Winston's. And to me, I just want to say that the partnership between response and having the right equipment, which goes back to manufacturing, helps to reduce the impact of the hazard. Because let's think about it. If that oil spill was not contained properly, it really would have made a mess of the beaches. And then the oil would further go out to the coral reefs and cause problems for the fishing sector.
Correct.
So kudos to them and all the responders who would have used the new technology to assist in reducing the spread of the oil.
Yep. Thanks very much. We're hearing some really rich examples of those successful partnerships, both in response, but also as far as readiness is concerned. And it spreads across, I think, various sectors, not just in relation to disaster management. But the point that you made, Mr. Jackson, around ensuring that infrastructure used for healthcare purposes, for example, that those essential buildings are actually safe during the passage of systems. We tend to think weather systems only, but we know that that's not necessarily the case. So the example that you would have given Mr. Allen around the oil spill and how that was contained in a way that it would not impact livelihoods and so on was also quite helpful. Let's wrap up the discussion now and take it back to communities.
Yes.
How can communities and small manufacturers, small businesses become more actively engaged in resilience building?
All right, if I'm allowed to answer again. I think that there's a lot of work for the Department of Emergency Management to do in terms of engaging communities and, of course, small manufacturers. We have our district emergency organizations, which will be the volunteer arm of the DEM. So across the 30 constituencies in Barbados, we have a number of DEOs, one DEO per constituency. Our challenge is to get volunteers and persons with skills who are interested in giving back to the community. So the only way a community can become resilient is by having a cadre of persons in each community trained in essential emergency management practices, whether it's first aid, basic first aid, radio communication, knowing how to operate a chainsaw to help remove any trees. Because one of the things that happens after the passing of a hurricane, lots of debris is in the road, fallen trees. So you have your volunteers who know the community, who grew up in the area, that can help with the assistance of clearance, who can assist in shelter management with the emergency shelters across the island. So I think that for us at DEM, we have to do more to engage persons in the community to show them the benefit of joining the DEO and being volunteers in terms of any hazard impacts. But also, I think at the national level, the government may want to look at the incentives that they provide for manufacturers who take it upon themselves to be involved in the building the communities, making them more resilient in terms of the hardware stores across the small communities, even in terms of the larger companies like CariGuard, who will be saying, well, look, we want to make sure that the community is better. We are willing to give a donation of whether it is equipment or installation of certain things, with the understanding that government sees that and say, you know what, we can give you, if not a tax write-off, some kind of incentive for doing more work in the community. CariGuard might say, you know what, we want to adopt a school, or we want to, when we say adopt a school, just provide a couple of the same fabric shutters, as you would call it, to assist in case of an emergency. Or we might want to subsidize the cost, like they would say to the government, okay, or the board of management for the school, we bring in generators, we have a generator here. We are willing to sell it at just a bit of a reduced cost. Those are the kind of incentives that can happen to build greater community resilience. And it involves everyone. Same thing with the insurance companies, where if people, once again, follow the building code and they have houses that demonstrate that they're resilient. You take a Tory house, you see the hurricane straps. You see that they may even have a backup water supply. They may have the water tanker along with the pump, or they might even have the necessary shutters. That should result in them getting some kind of, as you said, discount in the premium or whatever, so that it gives people that desire to want to be resilient because they're rewarded for it.
Thank you for that, Mr. Allen. Quite a comprehensive response. Mr. Jackson, would you want to add anything to that? Any advice for how small businesses, manufacturers, and communities can become more actively engaged in resilience building?
I think from the community point of view, the only thing that I would add to Mr. Alleen's comments is maybe things like the fact that community groups could make sure that they have preparedness plans in place,
Yes.
evacuation routes, meeting points, etc., etc. And also local advocacy, to touch on what Mr. Allen was saying, local advocacy to influence government action leading to better preparedness policies, the availability of funding. For instance, there's some development going on in town, and I know that there are funds available for local property improvement in that area alongside the actual developments. Let's make sure that disaster preparedness upgrades are the part of the purview of those funds, let's say. From a business point of view, CariGuard would characterise itself as a small manufacturer, and what we feel is incumbent upon us is to consistently look to improve our product. We listen to our customers, we hear what they're looking for, we analyse the life cycles of our products. We pay a lot of attention to any possible problems that come up over time, any things that customers say they would prefer. The idea being that we're always looking to give the best possible solution with regard to technology available at the time and our development level at the time.
Yeah. Okay.
And also finally, so just one last thing, is also as a small business, making sure that we attend and invest in events like this.
Yes.
Where knowledge and actual hands-on experience of what is available in the marketplace is there for everybody to be exposed to.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Callender?
Well, I see after hearing Mr. Alina and Mr. Jackson speaking, I realize all three of us are on the same wavelength.
Yes.
So I'm just gonna
That's good.
enforce their points, which is what I agree with. In the community, having those little check-ins, making sure that you can come to your neighbor and say, you know, hey, sure, do you have your emergency checklist?
Yes.
Do you have your kit ready? Do you have everything sorted? If not, you know, help one another.
Yes.
That's what we really should do.
Agreed.
Yeah.
We should help one another. And I
Getting
realize
back
we've
to
really
community.
strayed very, very far from that.
Yes.
And also, businesses within the community, I agree with, you know, adopt a school or offering some kind of discount on the product that is being advertised or so forth. But basically, I'm on the same wavelength as both of them, so it's just
Excellent.
me to add my little 2 cents there.
Excellent.
So right.
So here we now have the segment where we invite the audience to ask any questions of the panelists. So
All right, so Ms. Callender, I want to kind of your perspective on what the insurance industry can do to educate persons to insure their properties and not only insure them, but to insure them in right values. Because I know there are lots of persons who don't have necessary insurance.
When we attend shows such as this, we tend to make sure we have our leaflets and we come and we advise persons of what they should be doing and ways to go about it. So I think we need to push a little bit more. Yes, I know with social media, because most persons are on their phones now.
Yes.
So if you can have, you don't want it to be too long, but little segments where you can pop up and have a little tidbit to say, you know, do you have house insurance, or just those little bits and pieces that can capture the public's attention. Just like little reminders, but you should be doing this. Make sure your property is adequately covered, and all those little things. So it's to have that information constantly there to get that reminder. You're welcome.
I guess as a follow-up to that, because you mentioned it very briefly, but in this current economy, I find it's very difficult for many persons to be able to have any insurance policy whatsoever, whether it be life insurance, home insurance, content insurance. And I'm thinking specifically about like tenantry areas where a lot of houses are close to them and poor communities are. Do you think there's anything that can be done differently in the insurance agencies to ensure that those communities at the very least are covered in disastrous situations?
In terms of the heavily populated areas, there's some company, yes, you will find some companies who may not be able to offer cover, but you should have one or two who should be able to say, yes, I can give you cover. It may not be a full comprehensive, but based on the structure of the building and the proximity, based on those details, you'll be able to discuss and say, well, you know, we can give you probably fire only. At least you have coverage for the
Event of fire.
in the event of a fire,
True.
right? And then as time goes on, if the person can upgrade, say if it was a pine home, and they upgrade probably to concrete board, it's a little stronger. Then you can look at getting probably what we call is a comprehensive or residential homeowners, but it may exclude a catastrophe peril or two. But as you continue to upgrade and so forth, then you can always reach the stage of the full comprehensive.
Sorry, if I could add something as well, because I'm listening to you and I also heard your question.
Sorry.
I think it's very important. Once again, I know I always go back to government and policy. Remember that the population of Barbados is growing. And it's also very important that land use policies are put in place that are strict and we develop new housing communities. In the past, we would know that Barbadians would build houses that would just be in one level. And I think that with government is looking to do a lot more multi-story complexes for the obvious reason that you can get more people on a plot of land vertically than horizontally. And if that's the case, I think it's very important that those structures, we've seen the like London Bourne Towers that went up,
Country Road.
Country Road, the Country Road Towers as well, where people are living in, what you would call multi-story complexes. And that's the future. I think then that in terms of insurance, the insurance has to take on a different perspective, and government too as well in terms of policy. We have a situation where a lot of people in Barbados, not a lot, there's some segments of the population that are squatting. So there can't be any coverage. How can we say to squatters, well, we're going to insure your home when you're illegally on land that you have not purchased, that you have not paid land tax for? So once again, it goes back to the national policy because we don't want to disadvantage those persons.
Correct.
But obviously persons who are squatting will not have the protection that a person who would have renting a house or built a house illegally, that kind of coverage, that insurance and so on, wouldn't be that facility for them. So we want to get people right in every aspect. We want people to avoid squatting on land and then try to be a part of the housing program that the government is currently doing. So people can actually either live in a multi-story complex or live in a starter home, as we call it, and have the adequate insurance to cover themselves and their family.
In terms of, you mentioned different types of plans people can benefit from. Do you think people are aware that there's a financial planning element to insurance that can help them to move from one stage to the next?
I think some are aware. Some people are.
Of legislation, what's being done to ensure that relevant parties are aware of building code updates and that manufacturers can ensure that any quality standards for the materials match the necessary building codes?
Right, that's a very good point. For those businesses that take pride in what they do, the manufacturers, we already know that there is the Barbados National Standards Institute. So there's certain standards that are there for persons, or should I say major companies, doing things, whether it's building materials, whether it's roofing materials, whether it is the same concrete, or should I say cement. There are lots of requirements and national standards that they have to meet. I think the disconnect comes with the lack of enforcement of the building code, because we do have a national building code, but it's not really enforced, as I would have mentioned earlier. So the challenge for us then is to ensure that persons, we through legislation and through the enforcement of the legislation, that people recognize that they have to follow codes when it comes to building houses. If you have a house of a certain square footage, these are the amount of items or materials that should go into the construction of that home. What we have done more recently as it turns to water storage, the government has been giving incentives. And once again, I think that when you provide incentives for homeowners or home builders, it gives them something to look forward to, or reward for doing what is right. So you say to a person, like some of the credit unions, for example, provide a reduction in the cost of the water storage facility. So you can get $1,000 tank along with a pump for reduced cost, along with installation. So those are some simple things. I think that the way to go is to provide incentives for persons for doing the right thing. You will find that there's greater compliance rather than wagging your finger and say, oh, you're doing the wrong thing. By government providing incentives, not only for homeowners and renters and so on, but also for the small manufacturers like CariGuard, by saying, yes, we like what you're doing. If you bring in more of these units, if you do more of this, we can offer some kind of rebate. We can offer some kind of reward or incentive for you following it. So the big thing in Barbados is compliance, right? No one is going to go on a construction site and arrest a laborer or a foreman for not pouring enough concrete in the footing. Or if you're looking at the what we call the ring beam for the house and say, oh, that still doesn't seem to be platted. The man might say, well, I ain't care. He might just shrug his shoulders because of lack of knowledge, because of ignorance, or he really doesn't care. There's no enforcement to say, okay, you're in violation of code 123 of section ABC. That could lead for him, number one, losing the contract to build the house, or number two, being taken into the courts of law.
So I think some very good points have been made up to this stage of the session around affordability, around accessibility, the need for advocacy, etc. I'm just thinking about the average person out there who's thinking, all of this sounds great. I'd love to be able to access some of these innovative materials, etc., to safeguard my own home. So this question is more for you, Mr. Jackson, in this instance. How can the average householder or the average small business owner access the services, the goods that CariGuard offers? What are some practical ways for them to do that?
Question. One of the fundamental things I'd like to point out about hurricane protection is it is something that protects against the extremes that nature can throw at us. So we're looking at things that perform to the highest level, and they have to be ready to perform throughout the course of their lifespan. So unfortunately, as with regards to construction of those things, there is no shortcut. You have to use the best materials available, and you have to make sure that you're using materials that can be relied on at the time.
Right.
So that said, what we do is look for innovations in the marketplace that offer maybe a different angle. For instance, the hurricane fabric that we just mentioned. This is something that has not been on the market when you compare it to the other solutions that we all know. Has not been on the market for a large amount of time, but it is giving an affordable alternative to people. Now, as regards the financing side of things, if you're protecting a house with the standard roll shutters or the louvered shutters like Bahamas that hinge from the top, the colonials that open from the side, it is an investment in your property, and it can be a considerable investment. If you're doing 5, 6 or more windows, it's something that the majority of people have to budget for. We have finance schemes that we can offer. They are limited, unfortunately. We work with courts financing, and they offer schemes to people that are looking. We also offer payment plans ourselves. We do understand that people have to budget, and whenever we are going through with a possible client how we will actually implement this, stage payments is something we can talk about. So there is some give and take as far as that's concerned.
Right.
But the fundamental thing that we have to remember is it is an investment in protecting your property, and it's an investment against the extremes of nature. And if you try and do it by not really spending the amount you should spend, you could end up regretting that.
Agreed.
Yeah.
So, we try to help people as much as we possibly can to make sure that they can plan. One of the other approaches is that we take a property and we examine with people where they might start to protect, say, just a section of it to make a safer room,
Right.
a better word. So that maybe you only have to protect 2 or 3 windows, but you know that in the case of extreme emergency, the family can go in there, you have your plan, you have your provisions in there, you know whatever happens when you come out, you're going to be safe on the inside.
Yep.
And you do that at the minimum possible budget. Then, as time goes on, we can quote people in advance, and they know what the budget will be. As they have their funds prepared, they call us and say, hey, I'd like another window or 2 windows. And one of the other things that people do enjoy is that we do special offers every so often.
Right.
And if you're holding a quote from us, when we air the special offer, give us a call and say, upgrade my quote.
Yes.
Right.
That's one of the ways that people do find of financing these things over the longer term.
I also think that people need to explore what their bank or the credit union may offer, because once again, there are certain offers that are done times of the year. I mean, every couple of months you hear about vehicle loans, car loans, and so on. But I want to also encourage the financial institutions to offer packages, to offer some kind of initiative for persons to want to make their homes more resilient. Rather than just buying, having a deal on flat screen TVs and a nice washing machine and so on, you know, get people to understand that it's good to have those things inside your house, those creature comforts, very important. But it's also very important to secure the home so that those electronic items that you've invested in would be protected.
Protected.
Yeah.
Absolutely important. And I think it's always useful for the general public to be aware of what options are available indeed for tapping into just the options for safeguarding their homes and property. We have a couple more questions from the audience before we wrap up and close.
Okay, so one of the questions, I'm going to say those questions now because I think they're somewhat interconnected. So one of the things I want to find out is what future collaborations do you foresee can help to bridge the gaps in disaster management between public and private sectors? And then from the manufacturing perspective, how can the manufacturing sector be more engaged to collaborate more for the events that occur post-disaster? Because you've mentioned at some point, you know, that sometimes you get things like dengue, maybe when the area cholera or those types of things after disaster. But what we find when promoting for disaster preparedness, we focus more so on food and personal items, but not the things to protect against those issues that may occur after the disaster. So what we
Right. So I'll start here with the Department of Emergency Management. The DEM has a PR unit now, public relations unit, and we have a number of officers, including myself, who our job really is to get our message out across the various media that would allow a greater level of understanding and also buy-in from the public. One of the things we recognize is that events like this, they're very good. But for us too, we have to host our own events. So we have an open day coming up in July. So I want to take this opportunity to invite both of you to come and set up. You won't have to pay for booth space or anything, but on our premises, you'll be able to promote, whether we're in Bridgetown or we carry it to the BDF or at the EM headquarters in Warren's Industrial Park. It would be an opportunity to come and set up and to share your information. Once again, public awareness in terms of social media videos as well as radio ads help to get the message out that disaster management is everybody's responsibility. So once we can, and this behavioral change takes time, because I remember growing up as a boy years ago, more than 20 years ago, hearing about HIV AIDS awareness. And they had that campaign for more than 10 years. And it's only now you're beginning to see a lot of change in sexual behaviors among people. And it's the same thing. Sadly, I'm wondering if it means that Barbados may need to be impacted severely by a hazard to really take hurricane season seriously or to take disaster management seriously. We've been fortunate not to have any major impacts, just a brush with a tropical storm or hurricane here or there. But I think that we need to hit home the message to persons that it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when you're going to be impacted. And when you're impacted, do you want to be, like the Bible talks about the 5 wise and the 5 foolish virgins? Do you want to be among the 5 foolish virgins that didn't have oil in their lamps? Or do you want to be like the man that built his house on the sand? And when the wind and the waves came, the house fell and great was the fall of it. I think disaster management requires a lot of introspection. We need the public to do a lot of introspection, to think about their lives, to think about their properties, what is important to you. So I think that is where we have our work cut out to do in terms of behavioral change. Again, in Beijing to recognize that hurricane preparedness and disaster management is real and they need to be a part of it.
Great. Any other
Yeah,
inputs?
all I would add to that, I think Mr. Aline's encapsulated that very well. And I think the point that he made that was very salient is changing people's attitudes takes time.
Yes.
And forums like this and the social media advertising and all sorts of ways that we reach out to the general public, we may not see effects now, we may not see effects for a few years, but slowly,
Yes.
the direction of the boat will change and we'll be heading in the right direction. And we just need to keep pushing with getting the positive message out and being there to support people, answer people's questions, and get it to become more top of mind as time goes on.
That's right.
Ms. Calendar, any?
Totally.
Okay. All right. So thanks very much. I think this is an excellent example of PPP in practice. That's what I'll call it. Public and private sector
That's right.
partnerships in practice.
Well, like that first.
This, both in terms of this pavilion, this session, but also the open day that you mentioned,
Yes.
Mr. Aline. So with that, I just want to say thank you to our panelists for your very insightful contributions. Thank you also to the audience for their keen engagement and interest in the topic. Today's discussion really underscores the importance of collaboration on the part of government, private sector, and the community at large. And noting that it all contributes to enhanced disaster preparedness. It helps to accelerate recovery if we should ever be impacted. And like Mr. Allen said, not if, but when. And it will also help to close those gaps in advancing resilience
Yes.
for the country. So we heard about the value of local production and manufacturing. We heard about the value and the options when it comes to financing and insurance, being able to access those materials that can help us to withstand future hazards. So with that, I'll just encourage everyone to continue this dialogue beyond today's session and to take action where we can. I'd also at this moment like just to encourage persons to visit the booths across the pavilion to get more information. And just to say a special thank you once again to everyone and enjoy the rest of the expo.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.